Recently, I found myself informally guiding some people through their questions about creativity and their experiences of creativity. And that made me think about my own creative experiences in 50 plus years of being an artist, how creativity has moved in my own life and what I have learned about it. I thought I will share this because I know that many of you are creatives yourself. I'm not saying, by the way, that this is a definitive theory of creativity. One thing I have learned living a creative life is that I don't offer any ideologies and conclusions, because a creative life is always a life of discovery and revelation, and it's not about arriving at a dogma or a conclusion. So these are just my subjective experiences, and maybe it'll be helpful to some of you out there. So I was talking about creativity and unpacking it with two very different people. One was a young person who was just embarking on their creative practice, and they were finding that after their training, stepping out into the real world, of course, the whole pressure of earning an income and the structures we have about earning an income, whether it is in the creative fields or in any other ways of earning income. In fact, I think there's not that much difference, because this industrialization of work, which includes creative work, is something that I feel is completely antithetical to the way in which creativity moves and manifests in the world. So whether there are structures, when we call something creative industry, I think to me that's a paradox, because creativity is not about landing in structures and being manipulated and in a mechanistic way or in a transactional way. But then that's what we have. We have the structures of the world that allow us to earn income are inevitably these kind of industrial structures. So what do you do as a young artist on the threshold of your career, and you're finding that whether you work in the arts or whether you work in non-arts related work, you're faced with very similar dynamics and structures. The other person was a person who was older, who had been working for a long time in kind of industrialized workplaces, and they were feeling that a sense of emptiness, a sense of whether they had missed something in all these years, whether there was something that they should have done a long time ago, whether they will ever be able to do it again, and how to. It's that emptiness that comes when we feel disconnected from our authenticity. So this person was talking about it in terms of, how can I be myself? I feel like I have been caught up and living this life and being what everybody wants me to be, whether it's a mother or a worker or all of these other roles that we have, and then coming to a point where there's a sense of, has life missed me, or have I missed life? Have I been standing in the station while these trains have been going past, and I just simply haven't jumped on the train of my own authenticity and my creativity, and whether it's too late. In some ways there are similarities about this, and it's about something being missed. In both, when I was talking to both people, I had a sense of that emptiness, of that, a sense that there is something that they were missing, that something that was connected to their authenticity, to expressing who they are, which has got nothing to do with the expectations outside of them. But then there is this fear as well, as how do we do it if we don't have the structures that allow us to express that? Then what do we do? This is the interesting question about authenticity, or whether we call it soul, authenticity, or the essence of us, that who we truly are. I think many of us have the sense that it is not really to be found in the definitions or stories or roles that we are given, whether that is, as I said, whether as a daughter, a mother, a worker, or even this label of artist. That sometimes I know that in my own life, that I haven't really been able to find that authenticity or that soul level, the essence of who I am, even in the label of being an artist. In my tradition, in Indian tradition, the deity is called the poet. So, for example, the deity Krishna, in a very important philosophical text, he says that I am the poet, and it is because I am the poet that I know the principles of reality. I know how reality works. And if you consider reality as being created in some way by someone or a force or whatever, that it has come into being, which is a creative act, that coming into being, the making of something, then of course that the creative intelligence, in a way for me, underpins sentience. It underpins the very nature of reality. So it's not so difficult for me to consider creativity itself, or that poetic creativity, as being divine or sacred, or as being the deity, as being who we are in our essence, that there is a sacredness at that soul level, or the level of who we are, that authenticity, whatever we may call it. And I don't want to make it too religious, but I think that the sacredness of creativity is something that many of us feel, and we miss that. We miss that when we are constantly looking outwardly in order to find ways in which we can connect with that, or we can express that. And this has been my experience many, many times in my life. And something that I have learned, and what I call these days, is the exiting goddess. I think of creativity as the exiting goddess. And this is based on a really lovely archetypal story that comes from the ancient texts in India. And it is the story of the archetypal dancer called Urvashi. She's a celestial dancer, and she falls in love with the mortal, or the mortal, they both fall in love with each other. The mortal is called Pururavas. So Urvashi comes down to live with Pururavas in his house with his family. And for a while, they live happily together. Everything is going well. And this hymn, this particular hymn I'm referring to, is about the moment that Pururavas realizes that Urvashi is exiting or has exited. And he is absolutely tormented and in anguish. And he says, I don't understand. What has happened? Why have you left? We have been living together happily. 3 times a day I made love to you. You brought so much happiness and prosperity to the home. You brought this family so much happiness. I was so busy out there building up the cattle, having more and more cattle, increasing the numbers of our cattle, bringing prosperity, material prosperity. So why, I don't understand why you're leaving. And Urvashi says, yes, it's true. It's true that you made love to me 3 times. The word she uses is that you pierced me 3 times a day without fail. And yes, it's true that we did all that. But you wanted to domesticate a wild wolf. I am a wild wolf. I can't be domesticated. And sometimes you brought me ghee. Now, that bringing of ghee is a symbolic way of speaking about sacrifice, offering, because ghee in traditional rituals in India, ghee is poured into the fire in order to help the fire burn. So the offering of ghee is about strengthening sacrifice. So what she's saying is, the way I think about it is, every now and then he asked her, what is it that you desire? That offering, that sacrificial offering. She says, yes, you did that every now and then. But most of it was this mechanistic domesticization, it's a long word, this mechanistic way of domesticating this wildness. So creativity in Urvashi's invitation is a wild force. It's a wild intelligence. And for a while, we can fall in love with it and live with it. But then at a certain point, it's going to return to the wildness. We can't control it and we can't fix it. We can't stabilize it. Another beautiful poem speaks about the immortal in the house of the mortals. And that's another way I think of creativity, is that it is like trying to keep this immortal in the houses of mortals. And at a certain time, it's going to return to its immortality, to its infinitude, and to its wild, uncontained flow. But what is important about the hymn is that it's an invocation. And an invocation by nature is not about a linear story. It doesn't mean that this has happened and Urvashi has gone and that's the end of the story. It means that we invoke, when we realize that the creativity, the goddess of creativity has exited, we start our invocation again. We fall in love with her again. And she's not going to be the same Urvashi because she is an immortal. She is infinite. She is not this role, this particular personality that we meet, that we know, and then we just meet the same person again. But when we invoke and when we fall in love with creativity again, it's going to be a different version of Urvashi. And yes, for a while we will live with her and we will be very happy with her, and then she will leave again because she will always return to the wild. And then we've got to go into the wilderness and find her and fall in love with her again. So this beautiful suggestion that creativity is something that is always renewed, re-invoked, and that must be returned to the wild. And in a way, that is how I have experienced creativity in my life. And it took me a long time to actually recognize that perhaps this is the movement of creativity, that it must be met on its own terms, and it is a wild, infinite and sacred intelligence that you cannot just own it and fix it, that it will keep coming and going. I am actually facing one of these periods right now in my life where about 7 or 8 months ago, I felt this emptiness, which I recognize because I have met it many times in my life, this sense that, yes, everything seems to be going fine, the programs are going fine, and I begin to feel that I'm on autopilot. And it's not that I can force myself to keep going, because I've tried that before. Because when I do that, I start to feel sick. Literally, physically and mentally, I begin to feel sick. So I've learned now that I must stop, even though it's terrifying. I've got to let it go. I've got to let Urvashi go. Be like Pururavas, the lover, and be tormented, be terrified, and be sad for a while, and then start again, start afresh, start re-invoking. So that's what I've been doing these past many months, is I've been writing this book, but that process has really been a rediscovery of dance. I have been a dancer for 50 plus years, and every time that this happens, every time I meet Urvashi again, it is a completely new dimension of dance that I meet. It's like I've got to learn everything again and discover things. It reveals itself in an entirely different way. And I am going through that process now. I don't want to seem Pollyanna about it. I don't want to say, oh, this is an easy process, because it isn't. It's terrifying and tormenting, as it was for Pururavas, Urvashi's lover. He was heartbroken, and that was very genuine, and she wasn't telling him, you're not going to be heartbroken. She was recognizing that there is this grief and heartbrokenness. And many times when I come to these are moments when I have felt really alone, because generally people around you don't understand. You're supposed to be building and scaling, and this whole marketing paradigm which we have about the work that we do, or offering the services, and that is, it's so loud at the moment. It's so loud in these times with social media and with influencers. So this whole idea of constantly marketing, scaling, increasing the numbers, and yes, there is a pragmatic importance to all of that, but it's not really, I don't think that these structures are really made to align or to that they really have an intelligence, in my view, about the nature and flow of creativity. So when you come to these moments, generally people around you think that you're not really being practical, or you're not really being real, because the real thing is to keep going, to keep building, keep doing the same thing. If you find something that works, then keep doing it. That may work for marketing, I don't know, toothpaste or things like that, but I don't know that it works. Certainly for me, it hasn't worked for creativity. I find that I have had to integrate this ebb and flow, this exiting goddess of creativity, into my work in order for me to feel healthy and what can I say, authentic, more important word, and also healthy in being able to offer this. So I've had to renew and find that new version of Urvashi, meet the new dimension of Urvashi before I could continue. And these are periods of loneliness. Sometimes they're periods where you feel even a bit shame. And I spoke to both of these people I spoke to were speaking about feeling like they are not capable, they somehow don't fit in, and they don't meet the markers of success. And I've had that too. There at other times in my life where I've run very successful dance companies, and these moments have come where I've had to stop. I found myself very alone. The people that were the fans of the company and that were crowding and milling around me during the time of success, they all disappear. I remember one particular time in my life when a very successful dance company I had to pull out of because I felt in a similar way that the time had come to stop this work, to take a break. And I remember that I was completely alone in the offices of the company when I was closing it down. There was nobody with me. I had to do it on my own. In spite of having incredible numbers of audiences and well-wishers, that time I had to do it on my own. And there was a lot of shame because people would be talking about it in terms of a failure. I have even had people ask me whether I'm self-sabotaging. And for a while I wondered, is that what I'm doing? Because in terms of the world, if you're not really going into scaling up and getting bigger and more, there must be something wrong with you. So I've had to contend with all these things and then come to what feels true for myself. And that has always been most important to me. It doesn't matter what people say, but it is about aligning with what feels true to me, what feels authentic to me, what feels sacred to me. And that has really been the most important thing for me to be well and for me to feel that I'm acting with integrity. You know, recently I've been growing a small tulasi, it's called. It's a kind of Indian basil. It's a tulasi plant, and one of the women in my programs gave it to me. Now, tulasi is a very sacred plant. Not all plants are sacred, but tulasi has got a very important role in rituals in India. And it's very difficult to grow this tulasi plant where I live because there are extremes of climate here. It can be very hot or very cold. So this plant is quite vulnerable and fragile, and I've just had to bring her in because we're just about to start autumn. And I brought her in because it's been quite cold. The last few nights have been cold. And she's been thriving in the summer. She was very fragile when I got her, and I wasn't sure that she was going to survive, but she has. She has really thrived and grown and blossomed. And I've brought her in now, and I know she doesn't like to be indoors, but then it's very cold outdoors, so I have to be careful. I have to help her till she becomes strong. And I think about creativity in those terms of that. That time and again when we have to replant it and we have to tenderly nurture it, to know when to put it out in the sun and when to bring it back in when the elements are too strong, and to be patient and to go along with the nature and the unfolding of creativity itself, that creativity to be met on its own terms and not on our demands and our needs. It's as Urvashi said, that offering of the ghee is to say that we offer ourselves to the movement of creativity, to what the creativity wants us to be, and how the creativity in each one of us wants to express itself, because it's very, just as we are all unique, so is our creativity, and it always comes out in unique ways. So this standardization and this industrial models that we have, it's like trying to put this plant out in the strong winds and expect the plant to survive. Creativity is very strong, it's wild, it's fierce, but when it is growing in us, it also needs that tenderness, that compassion, and that patience. So I am tending the tulasi plant of my creativity in these days, and I know that there will come a time when it'll be ready. It'll be strong and it'll be ready. And then for a while, it'll live out its life, and just like the plants do, then it will exit and I will re-invoke again. I hope that this resonates with you in these times. I know, like I said, that we do live in a world where these structures of how to be, how to work, are not always aligned to what I sense is the ways in which we can be creative. But I think that if we can allow creativity to come and go, and to be patient, and to give it that solitude and the attention in the middle of everything else. I don't think we need to be in a cave to be creative. I think it happens in the middle of the world. It happens in the middle of everything else that we have to do. It's just that attention and the patience and the gentleness to allow it to unfold. And that is, of course, the nature. Creativity is the nature of our own soul and our own authenticity and our own essence in the midst of everything else that we have to be in order to pay our bills and to put food on the table.